Good morning. Please stand for the playing of our school alma mater, Maroon for Courage. Thank you. Please remain standing. It's a pleasure to introduce Student Body President Jonathan Elliott, class of 2021, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and then the reciting of our mission statement. Jonathan?
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing. The Boys Latin School of Maryland instills the core values of courage, integrity, and compassion in each boy as embodied in our motto, Esse quam videri, to be rather than to seem. By understanding how boys learn best, our talented faculty fosters enduring personal relationships and empowers each student to strive for academic and personal excellence.
Thank you, Jonathan. Please be seated. Jonathan, today we present you with the gavel, entrusting you with the leadership of the student body, the care of this community through the 2020-21 school year. Jonathan, we're excited for your leadership, Mr. President, and look forward to great things ahead this year. Well, it is such a pleasure to welcome you formally and finally to the start of the 2020-2021 school year, the 177th year of the Boys Latin School of Maryland. And of course, as you look around, this opening convocation's a bit different. Here today, we're joined by several of our youngest students in kindergarten and pre-first. We're also joined by our most veteran students, the class of 2021. And we're joined by the rest of our community virtually, whether here on campus or throughout the area. Our custom has been to recognize all new members of Boys Latin, our more than 100 new students, including all of our kindergarten students and the several faculty and staff members alike who join us this year. So if you are new to Boys Latin, whether here in the stadium or elsewhere virtually, please stand so that we may recognize you. Okay, fellas, stand up. Well, you can sit. That's cool. I also want to take a moment, and even though this is a new beginning for all of us as the new year dawns on Lake Avenue, it happens to be the last fall for more than a dozen of you who have made Boys Latin your home since your first days in school. So if you're a senior and you've been with us since the beginning, since kindergarten, pre-first, or first grade, come on, there are about 12 or 15 of you up there. Please stand so that we can recognize you. 12, 13 years here on campus. Now I'd ask the rest of the class of 2021 to stand as well. Fellas, We are so excited for you, and we are so excited to welcome you back home this fall. We can't wait to see what you'll do, and we can't wait to see what's next for you and for our school. We're excited for your leadership throughout the year. You can go ahead and have a seat. So, I want to tell you a couple of stories today. Perhaps you've heard them before, but in the context of our shared lives and experiences, I hope that you might think about them a little bit differently. There was an old man once. He had a gray beard. He had wavy, thinning, unkempt hair, especially when the wind blew. He might have been, 50 or so. Some said he resembled a grumpy old lobster boat captain. As was his custom, he would go for a walk on the beach early in the morning. On this particular day, he walked the beach after a big storm had passed, and he noticed that the beach was littered with starfish. As he was walking along, the old man spotted a little boy from a distance, and the boy looked like he was picking up something and tossing it back into the sea. The man squinted to try and see more clearly. He even went so far as to peer through his one good eye. He could see that the boy was doing this over and over again. And the old man grew curious. He approached the boy and asked him what he was doing. And the boy said, "Well, I'm throwing the starfish back into the ocean. Because if I leave them on the beach, well, when the sun gets up and gets high, it'll dry them out and the starfish won't be able to swim anymore." The old man grinned and he nodded his head and replied, "Well, fella, there are thousands of starfish on the beach. I'm not sure you'll make much of a difference, but good luck." Undeterred, the boy picked up another starfish and threw it back into the sea. Smiling, he then turned and said to the old man, "I made a difference to that one. Here, you can make a difference too." And with that, the boy handed the old man a starfish and waited for him to do his part. The old man, with a tear in his eye, tossed the starfish back into the ocean, and the pair walked the beach for hours. Most of you have heard this other story before, but especially today, I think it bears repeating. In 1959, the city of Baltimore informed the leadership of Boys Latin that the area around Brevard Street, where our school was located, was to be renovated. And quite honestly, our school buildings were in the way. Many thought that the last verse had been written in our school's storied history. Legend has it that the board decided to close and that the graduating class of 1960 would be the last of the Boys Latin School. I spoke to one of those graduates, Bill May, just earlier this week from his home in California. He once told me how the end of his senior year was so somber. It was marked with great uncertainty, as if all had been lost. But of course we know that wasn't the case. Jack Williams, class of 1938, was president of the Alumni Association, and with several other alumni and friends of the school, he went to work to find somewhere to relocate. Unfortunately, though, the 1960 graduation of Boys Latin came and went, and Mr. Williams and his colleagues had exhausted all of their resources, and despite their best efforts, they still hadn't found a solution. That was until weeks later, when Mr. Williams had heard that the Llewellyn estate, out in the countryside off of Lake Avenue, might be for sale. Mr. Williams said, "Well, let me make one last call. Let me see what we can do." Mr. Williams was trying to do his part to save our school. Sure enough, he was able to secure an agreement enabling Boys Latin to begin classes on Lake Avenue in the fall of 1960. Where we are today used to be an old muddy cow pasture, and there was a stream bed that ran nearby. Our campus store, those were stables and a carriage house. There were trolley tracks that ran behind me down Roland Avenue to downtown Baltimore, carrying passengers up and down by streetcar. And on the top field, well, there was an old well where residents would draw water. At the top of the hill behind us, of course, was the main house, which would become our school. Throughout the summer of 1960, teachers, staff members, and countless volunteers worked feverishly to transform that old house into a suitable school building. Now remember, students and teachers alike, well, they were accustomed to learning in a typical classroom of the day. Now, they might be teaching or learning in a very different environment, in bedrooms, or in parlors, or on porches. The upstairs, that would house our lower school. And some grades, like the first and the second grade, they'd be taught in the same bedroom together. Our entire upper school was on the main floor, and at one point, the upper school would sit in a supervised study hall in the front of what's now Williams Hall. They would sit in a room that supposedly leaked even when it wasn't raining. I can tell you it still does. It surely wasn't how anyone had planned our school to be. Students and teachers had to be flexible and creative. They had to think about things and do things differently than they were accustomed to. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Most importantly, the spirit of our school, the hope and optimism for who each boy could be, carried forward from Brevard Street here to Lake Avenue for a whole new generation, actually for many generations yet to come, to learn to live out our motto, esse quam videri, to be rather than to seem. I share this story with you today, September 18th, 2020, because it was on September 19th, 1960, that not even 150 students and faculty began here, right here. Tomorrow marks our 60th anniversary on Lake Avenue. Were it not for the countless sacrifices of so many alumni, faculty and staff, students and families, were it not for Mr. Williams' willingness to make one last phone call, were it not for the entire community to come together to do their part, Boys Latin would not be here today. You and I would not be here today. One of the people who helped to make all that happen is with us today. Our Associate Headmaster Emeritus, Mr. Dyson Earhart, commemorates his 60th year as a member of our faculty and staff. You see, in the 1960-61 school year, he returned to Boys Latin, his alma mater, to do whatever he could to help the school and whatever boys needed to be successful. Time does not permit us to detail all of the various roles that you had, including 5th grade homeroom teacher, director of admissions, director of development, and so much more. Mr. Earhart, we couldn't be more grateful to be the beneficiaries of the part that you have played and all that you have done for the school that we love. Fellas, won't you join me in thanking Mr. Earhart? I hope that the message of these stories is clear for you. The boy and the old man and the starfish, Mr. Williams, Mr. Earhart, countless alumni, teachers, and friends of the school, each when faced with what seemed like insurmountable odds, each did his part. This year, more than ever, that's what we are challenged to do. In the face of what could be impossible and overwhelming uncertainties, our entire faculty and staff has worked tirelessly over the past 6 months to make today possible. Dare I say that my colleagues have worked and are working harder than they ever have before. Fellas, won't you please join me in a sign of appreciation and gratitude for the extraordinary work of our faculty and staff. Fellas, make no mistake. All that our faculty and staff has done and are doing, they're doing for you. And I want to spend just a couple more minutes talking about what it looks like to do our part throughout this year. In confronting the challenges presented by COVID-19, we're faced with different practices and different ways of doing things. One of the most important principles in thinking about doing our part is consideration and respect for others, for our classmates, for our families, for the faculty and staff, for our whole community. We've seen and heard firsthand that each of us has a role to play in ensuring the health and wellness of this community. So please, take the health screening seriously, and if you don't feel well, please don't come to school. When you do arrive to campus, please wear your mask, which you should wear at all times unless directed otherwise. Please practice good hand hygiene. Wash your hands regularly, use hand sanitizer and when you enter classrooms and buildings and exit as well. And most importantly, while we're back together, we also need to remain a little bit apart. So please stay 6 feet away from your closest neighbor or friend. You know, we've taught our lower schoolers to make airplane arms. Guys, you think you can make airplane arms? Ready? So, extend your arms. You shouldn't be touching another person's wings. And after all, friends don't let friends crash into one another, right? And look, though the temptation is great to greet your friend with an arm around the shoulder or a high five or a hug, we need to find new and creative ways to share that affection. So instead, when you see your buddy, you can wave or give an air high five from 6 feet away. Or maybe you can bow to one another, or you can tap your closed-toed shoes. Or, if you feel so moved, instead of giving your buddy a bear hug, you can give yourself your own two-handed hug while they do the same thing. So I'm going to ask our seniors to demonstrate. Fellas, go ahead and stand up. Come on. Jonathan, stand up. All right, fellas, ready? Let's give ourselves a two-handed hug. It's the 2021 sign of affection and brotherhood here on Lake Avenue. All right, you did a great job. Go ahead and have a seat. Now, look, I say all of these things a little bit humorously, but really as a way to reinforce it's incredibly important for each of us to do our part. One of the great joys of every new school year is the freshness that it brings, the renewal, the limitless possibility, the idea that the better days lie ahead and it's in our hands to make those happen. The idea and the hope for what can be. Each of you, all of us, has the power and the potential to be a force for good here on campus and more broadly in our community. But it begins with each of us doing our part. Each of us living out our shared values of courage, compassion, and integrity. Choose civility, decency, and respect. Quite simply, live out our motto, esse quam videri, to be rather than to seem. Be good to yourselves. Be good to one another. Take care of yourselves, take care of one another, and take care of our extraordinary community. Fellas, it's been a long time coming, but we're back. And it is a great day to be a Laker. Welcome to the 177th year of the Boys Latin School of Maryland. Let's all do our part to make this the best year yet. Thank you. What do you think? Pretty good. So that concludes our opening convocation. Seniors, I'm going to ask you to remain seated while our youngest Lakers head back across the street to lunchtime? Recess? Where are we going? Both of those things, probably. Have a great weekend, everybody out there in cyberspace.